Devaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
So we read from Srimad Bhagavatam. This is Canto 10, Chapter 6, text number 4. Is that right? Sake karya ekadopatya. Sake karya ekadopatya. Utana nanda gokulam. Utana nanda gokulam. Yoshitva mayayatmanam.
Yoshitva Mayayatmanam.
Yoshitva mayayatmanam.
Yoshitva Mayayatmanam.
Ravishat kamakarini.
Ravishat Kamakarini.
Ravishat kamakarini.
Ravishat Kamakarini.
Sake karyo kad. Sake karye kadopatya.
Sake karye kadopatya.
Utana nanda gokulam.
Utana nanda gokulam.
Yoshitva mayayatmanam.
Yoshitva Mayayatmanam.
Ravishat kamakarini.
Ravishat Kamakarini.
Sake karye kadopatya.
Sake karye kadopatya.
Utana nanda gokulam.
Utana nanda gokulam.
Yoshitva mayayatmanam.
Yoshitva Mayayatmanam.
Ravishat kamakarini.
Ravishat Kamakarini.
Sake karye kadopatya.
Sake karye kadopatya.
Utana nanda gokulam.
Utana nanda gokulam.
Yoshitva mayayatmanam.
Yoshitva Mayayatmanam.
Ravishat kamakarini.
Ravishat Kamakarini.
Sake kari ekadopatya.
Sake karye kadopatya.
Utanananda gokulam.
Utanananda gokulam.
Yoshitva maya atmanam.
Yoshitva Mayayatmanam.
Pravishat kamakarini.
Ravishat Kamakarini.
Sake karye kadopatya.
Sake karye kadopatya.
Utana nanda gokulam.
Utana nanda gokulam.
Ekari, who travelled in outer space. Ekada, once upon a time. Upapatya, was flying. Putana, the demon Putana. Nanda Gokulam, at the place of Nanda Maharaj. Gokula. Yoshitva, converting into a beautiful woman. Mayaya, by mystic power. Atmanam, herself. Pravishat, entered. Karmacharini, one who could move according to her own desire. Translation. Once upon a time, Putana, Rakshasi, who could move according to her desire and was wandering out in outer space, converted herself by mystic power into a very beautiful woman, and thus entered Gokula, the abode of Nanda Maharaj. In response, please. Once upon a time, Putana Rakshasi, who could move according to her own desire, and was wandering in outer space, converted herself by mystic power into a very beautiful woman, and thus entered Gokula, the abode of Nanda Maharaj. Report by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Rakshasis learn mystic powers by which they can travel into outer space without machines. In some parts of India there are still such mystical witches who can sit on a stick and use it to fly from one place to another in a very short time. This art was known to Putana. Assuming the feature of a very beautiful woman, she entered Nanda Maharaj's abode, Gokula. Om Ganti Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Himati Om Ganti Mirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jaina Tasmai Shri Gurave Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Kacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastashyadi Shitani. So welcome everybody to New Mayapur after a long and arduous journey. Longer than what probably you thought. Yeah. When will it end? But anyway, we're here now. So we can chill out a little bit. Spiritual chill out. Everything's there in the spiritual world. So we just have to convert it into Krishna consciousness, that's all of this material world. And so that's why we're here in Srimad Bhagavatam, to see things through different eyes. You know, Jesus said, you see black where I see white. We read the Bible day and night, you see black where I see white. So this is the difference between materialistic vision and spiritual vision. And gradually by this hearing process, you know, Bhagavatam explains the heart and the vision is changed. And it's quite simple, that's all we have to really do. If we are intelligent enough to hear this philosophy, then if we really hear it on a daily basis, it will just automatically change our perspective of life. So here we have Putana. So this is the beginning of the persecution of the inhabitants of Vrindavan, and in particular Krishna. All the demons sent by Kamsa were sent to actually try and kill Krishna. And you know, all these demons, they have mystic power. They have the ability to, you know, change their form and do so many things that human beings can't do. You know, human form of life is very special in that we can perfect our life. That's the real specialty. But in the hierarchy of living entities in the universe, we're not so significant, you know. Even, who was it? Ravan, he made a big mistake when he gave, you know, he tried to actually make himself immortal by going through all the different, you know, species of life, but he didn't bother with the human beings. But then Lord Ramachandra came as a human being. So, Putana now is coming as a beautiful woman. Say something about these Rakshasas. You know, Hiranyakashipu was a Rakshasa. And he wasn't really a Rakshasa, although he was appearing as a Rakshasa. He was actually one of the twins who came from Vaikuntha. But you know, he was the epitome of demoniac life. He had everything that you could possibly want, but still he wasn't satisfied. And so the only real treasure in life is actually Krishna consciousness. Whatever we try to achieve, without that is just, Prabhupada is a big zero. So we can understand that there, from Bhagavatam, that there are other living entities in this universe, and the planets are not all vacant, and that, you know, there are actually higher living entities, pious living entities, demigods, and there are also lower living entities like the, you know, the Danavas, Rakshasas, Yakshas, like that. So we can just imagine that, you know, what is it like on the lower planets where Putana appears to have come from. You know, it says that when we get as far as, I think it's the fourth one down. What's called that one there? Can you remember? Atalalo, Vitala, Sutala, Atala. I think it's the next one, Talatala. So they're living entities on the Talatala planet, and they live in holes. And they're so cruel, it's unbelievable. So this is the, so they're there. Everything's there. But we're just tied into thinking this world is be all and end all. This is part of Maya's trick. And there's nothing afterwards. We can do what we want. That's not a fact. It's completely different. And a bit more about the demons. Actually, we'll go on to the demons. They don't get their power. You know, can you imagine? You get demoted to a lower species. You think you lose all the power. You know, you become more and more covered. But actually, they perform tapasya. A big tapasya to come to Mayapur today. The reward is spiritual enlightenment. They perform tapasya without knowledge, and by that tapasya they can actually get very great power. Hiranyakashipu was the emblem of that. He was he stood on his tiptoes for I don't know how many, a long time, so many years of the demigods, and eventually he became so powerful that flames were shooting out of his head, and he was scorching the heavenly planets. And so, but devotees perform a different type of. Can you imagine? You know, you go through the Mangalarti and then you have to perform some tapasya. You know, you have to stand on your tiptoes for 2 hours. It's the difference between our tapasya and that of the demons. But they do that. People are performing tapasya in this material world. So much tapasya, because we can't live without tapasya. We cannot live in the material world unless we perform some austerity, and that gives us the ability to function. So tapasya is there. It's, you know, what do we want to perform tapasya for? We can perform tapasya where there doesn't appear to be an immediate result, and sometimes it feels like that. That's devotional service. Or we can perform tapasya where there's an immediate result. So it requires intelligence to see what the result is and remember what the result is at all times. And so this hearing process is actually strengthening that. Jnane priyasam udapashyana mantyeva jivanti sam akaritam varadiya varnam stane stitasya shruti gatim tanovam manobhya yaprayaso jita jita apitrais trilokyam. We cannot conquer Krishna by any other means, even if we have great tapasya, even if we're a great sage. He says, but that simple devotee who pays respects to hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, then actually he attracts me. It attracts Krishna. Actually Krishna becomes subservient to that devotee eventually. I mean, look at the tapasya with many famous people in this world, but where are they now? Prabhupada gives examples. You know, can you imagine being as powerful as President Kennedy once was? Can you remember President Kennedy? I think he left his body in 1963 or something like that. And you know, he was actually more powerful. The Russian, you know, there was a Cold War, and he just actually, you know, the Russians came to put a base in Cuba, and he said, if you take one more, unless you get these ships 200 miles away from Cuba within the next 24 hours, we'll open fire. You know, he was powerful enough to, and they all, because it, you know, America was so powerful then. But where is he now, Prabhupada says? You seem to get something very, you know, something very satisfying for some short time, that's all. So a devotee is more intelligent than that. So we're talking about empowerment. Tapasya brings empowerment, is that right? You know, Lord Brahma, he's the leader of our disciplic succession and the head of the universe. Right at the beginning of the Bhagavatam it says he came from the stem, which was coming from the navel of Gaubadakshaya Vishnu, and he came onto the lotus flower at the top, and it was just completely black. He didn't know what to do, and then, you know, he got the first instruction from the Lord in the form of Gaubadakshaya Vishnu. In other words, you're in the material world now, tapa. So Lord Brahma had to perform tapasya for so many thousands of years. And eventually when the Lord was satisfied, he gave him all the intelligence to perform the secondary creation. In other words, all the living entities in the material world, all the life forms, all the functions which take place in this world are coming from Lord Brahma. And so, you know, he was able to do that just by performing tapasya. And, you know, Lord Brahma, he lives for 311 trillion years. 311 trillion years. But each day of his life, he takes rest like we do for 12 hours. He has 12 hours awake and 12 hours. And each time he wakes up, he's got to perform that tapasya again. He's got to create the whole material creation. How many days is that in 311 trillion years? And at the end of his lifetime, he can actually he can associate with a Mahapurusha. Who's a Mahapurusha? It's Gaubadakshaya Vishnu. So that's a lot of tapasya. What's our tapasya? How long do we live? If we look, you know, 70 years they say on average. It's a bit more now, they say, but I'm not sure about that. 70 years, as any good mathematicians, 70 times 365, isn't it? Come on. It's 21,000, isn't it? Something like 22. About 22,000 compared to 311 trillion. The empowerment, this is what we're talking about. Tapasa brahmacharya na samena cha damena cha. Charya such a socha yamena niyamena va. This is recommended in Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the tapasya that Putaram performs. It might be for the wrong reason. He says that tapasya, if it's actually done for the benefit of making spiritual life, we get some purification. The heart becomes purified. And then, when the heart's purified, then we can understand devotional service. He said, but, you know, as soon as we stop that process, he says it's like burning the weeds on the surface. We set fire to all the weeds to kill all the weeds of material desire. But then if we leave it, what happens? He said the roots are still in the ground. And so all the weeds come back up again. And we've got it all to do again. So in this particular section of Bhagavatam it says, Kechit ke valaya bhakta vasudeva prayana. Agam dun bhatsin niraha eva bhaskaram. It says that only a rare person who can perform devotional service can uproot the weeds of material desire with no possibility that they'll ever return. He said we can do this simply by performing devotional service. And it works just like, you know, this morning, maybe there was some mist over the pond. He said, but as soon as the sun comes, gone. So this is our process. It's not so much tapasya, little tapasya. Mangalati, tapasya, every morning. It's like the modes are pulling. But we get up and it becomes a habit. And what's next from, you know, going before the deity? It's not really a tapasya for a devotee. But we could be doing so many other things. And, you know, singing prayers, becoming charged up. Have you had that feeling, you know? I remember when I used to do Sankirtan, I used to, at the end of the day, I felt okay, you know, but then, you know, the next morning, you know, you got fired up distributing books. The next morning I thought, oh, I've got to go out on the street again. You know, the mind starts kicking in. But then, you know, we went to Mongol. After Mongolati, things are not so bad, you know. Then Japa, you know, a little bit, starting to get a little bit more enlivened. Then Guru Puja. And then Bhagavatam class. Then Prasadam, let me get out there. So this is spiritual life. We undergo this tapasya. And if we do it properly all day, we're actually eager to serve. Yes, so there's one story in Srimad Bhagavatam actually about Dadichi Muni. It's not really a story about Dadichi Muni so much, but it was when Indra, he wanted to actually overcome one great demon called Vritrasura. Now Vritrasura was a devotee actually, in his, before this particular body. And he made a mistake. He actually laughed at Lord Shiva, and Parvati wasn't amused. And so she, you know, she actually cursed him to become a demon. And, you know, this demon Vritrasura, he was still actually in remembrance of he was a devotee. And Vritrasura, he had to actually fight against the demigods. He was on the demon side. And, you know, he was actually completely annihilating all the demigods. He was trampling on them, killing them, eating them. And Indra, you know, and the demigods, they went to the Supreme Lord, and he told them to, you know, the spiritual master, Brihaspati had left them. He'd committed a great offence. And so he told, actually this is a different pastime. So they went to, he was told to go to Dadichi. If you go to Dadichi, Lord Brahma, you know, he told the demigods after they approached him to go to Dadichi and get his bones, and then we can make a thunderbolt which will actually destroy the demons. And so when they went to Dadichi, you know, he's a devotee. Dadichi, he wanted to test them. He says, well, you know, I'm attached to my bones. He said that, you know, if you knew the pain, because to give up your bones, you have to leave your body, right? And so he said, I'm attached to my bones, and besides, if you knew the pain of having to leave this body, you wouldn't ask. And they said, if you knew the pain that we're in fighting these demons, you wouldn't refuse. And so he says, okay, you've passed the test. And so he just gave up his body. And it says that he gave up his body and he never even noticed it. So this is the beauty of the passage of a devotee. You know, we know the pains we feel in this lifetime. And as we get older, there's more pains and it's more often. And, you know, they don't always go away. And so this is training for that time. It's training to wake us up that this is actually, we can imagine what it's like at the time when we have to leave this body. But if we do the practice of devotional service nicely, and we actually take shelter of Krishna, then at the time when we leave this body, we're so absorbed that we actually just carry on our service. It's just service here, and it becomes service in the spiritual world. I was reading about Srinivasacharya. Srinivasacharya was a great devotee. It's said to be a tenth of the power of Lord Chaitanya. He was so empowered. And you know, it talks about the at some point he was so advanced that he would just sit down and start meditating. It'd be in the spiritual world. And then, you know, his wives, he had 2 wives, and they became worried. And for 3 days, he never moved. And so they brought another devotee, Kaviraj, what they called him. Anyway, one other devotee, he was his senior disciple, and he sat at the side of him. And then, you know, he actually merged into the same pastime as Srinivasacharya was in. And then, you know, there was a bit of a problem in the spiritual world. And they solved it. Now they came back to... So they actually, you know, devotees simultaneously in the spiritual world and simultaneously in the material world. Narayana Parasave, what's that verse? Narayana Parasave, Na Katushana Vibhite, Svarga Apavaga Narakeshu. That it doesn't matter for a devotee if he's engaged in service. If he's actually engaged in service with, you know, full focus, then he doesn't notice the externals. He may be aware of them, but they don't affect him. Has anybody had that experience sometimes? I remember when I first joined the movement, it's you know, in normal life, you're working all week, aren't you? And then you can't wait for Friday. Friday, you know, your mood starts to lift like anything. And then, you know, when you clock out or you put your things down and you go out, you think, Friday night. And then Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, so many things going off. And then, you know, Saturday evening, that's the penultimate, that's the ultimate actually. And then Sunday morning, oh, wait a minute, it's Monday tomorrow. So you know where you are all the time, all the way through the week. But I found when I came to devotional service and I moved into the temple, I used to be saying, what day is it? And then he would say, it's Ekadashi today. Yes, so we're actually, devotees are pretty much, when they're absorbed, they're not actually in the material world. It's all dependent, you know, we could talk about mystic power. Putana had mystic power. So in Bhagavad Gita it says that, you know, at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, what did it say? There's, I forgot what it said now. It says, Yata Yogeshvara Krishna. Krishna's a master of, wherever there's Krishna, a master of all mystic power. So he's the source of, what's mystic power? Mystic means we don't understand. It's a mystery. And so it's only a mystery if we don't understand it. And so Krishna's a master of all mystic power. And so, you know, Putana, she has mystic power. We can't understand how it works. She can't understand how it works. In fact, in this material world, nobody can really understand anything. You know, the scientists think they can understand. They can understand a little bit of the you know, the mechanical arrangement of how things are working. They don't know that there's actually some life force behind it. And they're caught up in the middle, and they know this much out of the whole, compared to the whole universe. I remember once, how do we actually break free from that misunderstanding of this material world? As we said in the beginning, by hearing, especially Bhagavatam. And you know, when Prabhupada, he was, I forget, he was in London actually at that time, and he had one disciple, you know, was his servant, and his disciple was getting a little bit loose in his devotional service, and therefore he was actually becoming, you know, more materialistic in his outlook. And it was in 1969. Does anybody remember what happened in 1969? The moon landing. So, you know, he was an American. And he, you know, so he was keeping tabs on the moon landing, you know, looking at the papers. And then, you know, they said that the next day they'll actually land. So this devotee went and got a television. And he brought it before Prabhupada and he said, Prabhupada, they're landing today. You know, he'd been giving Prabhupada a running commentary how they were progressing. And Prabhupada said, oh, they're going to land on the moon. And so, anyway, he put the television there and Prabhupada was taking a massage, but he was facing the other way. And Purushottam was actually, you know, commenting on, he says, and eventually, who was it who landed? It doesn't really matter. Anyway, one of the astronauts put his foot on the moon and he said, Prabhupada, they've landed. They've landed on the moon. He says, oh, he says, what's it like there? He says, are there trees? Is there grass? Is there mountains? He said, no, Prabhupada. He says, are there cities and people? He said, no, Prabhupada, it's a moon. And Prabhupada says, they have not landed on the moon. Now that sounds like, you know, a simple thing for a devotee because, you know, we can actually understand that there's a lot of diplomacy and cheating going off in the world. And, you know, if anybody had said that to any of the general public at that time, they would have locked him up. It was just like, what's the matter with you? You know, but Prabhupada, he actually said, they have not landed on the moon. Why? We was talking to some of his friends, sorry, not his friends, some of his disciples, later his senior disciples, and because this devotee, when he heard Prabhupada say that, he just left the movement. You know, he became so bewildered. And so after a few months, Prabhupada was talking to some of his senior men, and he said, and they were talking about this devotee, and he said, and Prabhupada said, yeah, I could understand him not believing me, but how could he not believe the Srimad Bhagavatam? So yeah, we understand things through the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam, and then we must understand them properly. So this is the position in this material world, that everything is actually mystical, and the only reality is when we see it through the eyes of Shastra and the spiritual master. And then we see things as they are. Like, take for instance the makeup of this whole universe. If you listen to the scientists and you watch their diagrams, it's completely different from the Srimad Bhagavatam's description. You know, the whole Bhumandal, you know what a Bhumandal is? It's the terrestrial plane which goes all across, it goes halfway across the universe to the Aloka Mountains. And it's all resting, what's it resting on? Does anybody remember?
Elephants.
On 4 elephants. There's one on each corner. And then on that, you know, there's mountains which are 800,000 miles high. And everything outside that's dark. In there, then in the middle, there's Jambudvip. It's an island. And then there's a salt water ocean. And then there's Plagshadvip, and then a sugarcane ocean. Then another one, then there's a liquor ocean. Like that. And in the middle is an upside down mountain. And on top of it is the residence of the demigods. And the sun is going round this mountain. So it's a completely different description. But, you know, a devotee has to, we may not understand how these things are happening, but if we take it from Bhagavatam, then we get the proper understanding. So now we're hearing about a witch called Putana. And even bigger witches, what's the biggest witch? Bhaktivinoda Thakur sings. A witch called Maya. Imagine, it's Prabhupada said in this purport that the witches, he said it's in northwest, anybody from northwest India? You're from northwest India. He says there's still women who can, they get a stake and they can fly on it. It'd be handy if we knew that science, wouldn't it? And we're back to Vedanta Manor, we could have got some twigs. Or a pujari, and I'll say a few mantras. Give me a backhander for next time. Would have been here in no time. So anyway, I'm going to stop this. Just over 10 minutes, just under 10 minutes to go. Has anybody got any comments or any questions?
Alright, there was a technology which we had lost where they used to have the mantras, and you know when the Ram Bhagwan, he built the bridge from India, there was a technology which I think we have lost where you can say the mantras and you can fly, or you can put the air or the rain. So I think we had that technology before years, thousands of years.
Yeah.
Which was lost where, you know, we can fly maybe as well with the mantras.
Yeah. Yeah, sound vibration is the beginning of the creation. Krishna says, Shabdake, Shabdake means I am a sound in ether. And in the Bible they say, in the beginning was the word. That's Om, you know, the beginning. And so then from Om, from that original sound vibration, which is actually the Hare Krishna mantra, then, you know, ether is generated from which he can travel. From the combination of the two, then the next element, sound is touch. The next element is the air, and things are gradually built up like that. And that's how the yogis would leave their body. They would actually, you know, we've got earth, water, fire, air, ether in this body. They would merge the element into another, until there was, you know, they relinquished the material body. But our process is that, you know, we'd have to do that at a special time. The sun would have to be travelling to the north. It would have to be the light fall night of the moon. and you know, so many other things. And if you got right, then you could actually go to the next planetary system, the Shishuma. Then you go over the Shishuma. Then you eventually can reach Brahmaloka. So it's a long way. But it says the devotee doesn't have to think about that. He just carries on with his service. The biggest thing is to be absorbed in service and be conscious of that service, and that's enough. Yeah.
Maharaj, if we're confronted with these scientific people, these people who believe in nescience.
Or believe in what?
Nescience. Let's say, for example, we say about this problem with the moon landing. You know, what are some definitive ways we can argue for descending knowledge instead of ascending knowledge when these people confront us?
What arguments do we give?
Yeah, how can we confront these?
Well, you know, they're expert in explaining how it's possible because they have the wrong information. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, that's my
I
question.
mean, there's two ways. One is if you actually research. When I was in Russia, I saw one Russian program that was translated into English, and it was this cosmonaut. And they were interviewing him. He says it's impossible to get to the moon, even if he says there's a big radioactive belt called the Van Allen belt, and they couldn't even get near it, but to go through it. So we can argue like that, but then they'll come with something else. And so we argue from where are you getting your knowledge from? And you know, is a human subjected to 4 defects? And so, is it possible that we might be wrong? That's the way we argue. And then we argue about, you know, knowledge which is coming from beyond this world is not subjected to 4 defects. So we take that.
The knowledge coming down from the divine instead of the knowledge coming up from the mundane.
Yeah, so, you know, and all we have to say is, look, you don't have to believe me, try it. The proof of the pudding is in the eating.
I think it takes special persons to argue with them. I don't think it's for everybody to do it. Like we have Saraputta and we have Pushakama, because they are educated in that field and they speak the language. I don't think scientists will listen to some guy on the street who
Yeah. I'm just talking about if you want to go that way, you can mention that and see if it works, you know. But it's not the way to go really. We just go the way I just mentioned, the second way. That's the best. And then
yeah, you can't argue sometimes with these people, I guess. They're already decided.
ultimately, you can't defeat somebody who doesn't want to listen. That's the thing. So we have to be, you know, a devotee who's preaching. He has to be aware that when to switch off. Otherwise, you just get wound up unnecessarily. And so, you know, we avoid people who don't. He says we avoid atheists, which is what it means if they don't want to listen. Because we'll just you know, make them more angry, or we'll become angry if we carry on. So we only preach to people who will actually want to listen, you know.
Borderline cases.
Yeah, anybody who, you say, you know, he's on the street distributing books, and you know, a lot of people will go by without stopping. One will stop out of, you know, 3 or 4 that stop. One may take a book. It's like that. So that's the percentage. It's like 1 in 100, something like that. Okay, anything else? Okay, Grantaraj, Srimad Bhagavatam, Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada, Ki Jai, Gaura Premanandi.
Dayananda Maharaja ki jai.